W
T L.
It's time! W
T L.
I think we got a show. Oh yeah, we got a show. W
T L.
And welcome back, everybody, to WTL. Where's the Line? Nebraska's first and only sports betting show. I'm your host, Andy Klassen, and this week I am joined by, he is back, folks, Matt Plotchek. Plotty, how we doing?
I'm doing great. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. This is such a great time of year. Coming off March Madness, had a lot of fun with that. Everybody's brackets were busted, except for the one lucky winner, of course, like every year. But now we got the Masters, UFC 300, Major League Baseball's kicked off. We are 10 games into the season, and that's why we had to bring you back, because you were, let's use a baseball pun, you were hitting some home runs last year for us. I mean, you were picking futures left and right, and they were panning out for us.
It's called doing your research, my man, and maybe a little stroke of luck. I mean, I think about the big one I hit on last year was the Texas Rangers. I mean, They had the talent, they had the things lined up, and, you know, baseball sometimes you get a little bit lucky, and sure as heck, they rolled through the postseason and eventually rose that crown in October.
Yeah, they really did. And, you know, the Dodgers were out of their way. You know, certain things lined up. And in the playoffs, baseball is wild. You know, Billy Bean, GM for Oakland Athletics for a long time, you know, he's quoted as saying, my SH, you know what, doesn't work in the playoffs. You know, he can usually scrap together a decent regular season, but come playoff time, that's not how that roster's built.
Right. I mean, you could also say the fact that it's a war of attrition.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking about how things have transpired last year into this year already with the Tommy John issues with shoulders and elbows and what have you. It's already shaping up to be a great season so far.
Well, let's start with the NL West, and we'll work our way through the divisions. No surprise here. The LA Dodgers were far and away your odds-on favorite to win this division going into the season. I believe it opened to like minus 600. Like, you wouldn't even think of touching that. There's no value there, and that odds has actually gone up there since their start. They are 10-5 right now. And the next closest is Arizona and San Diego, both sitting at 6-7, 6-8, respectively. And I don't know. What are your initial thoughts on if you did have to bet this division? I don't know where the value is. Right now, I'm kind of looking at San Francisco maybe making a move. That would be my only inkling as to maybe finding some value out of this NL West.
San Francisco's a pretty intriguing pick. I know they have one of the former Royal players, Jorge Soler. He's hitting some bombs. I've already seen him go yard a couple times. Logan Webb is one of the up-and-coming young fireballers that they have. I would like to talk about Arizona.
Okay, the Diamondbacks. Hey, they made the playoffs last year and put on a pretty nice little run there at the end. They are currently at plus 1,200 to take down this division, sitting right there in the two-hole.
Right, and they also have a lot of talent. Corbin Carroll rings a mind to me. 5-tool player, gets it done. He plays center field. He's someone to bank on. Ultimately, hey, you know what? That'd be a team to look for possibly as a wild card to sneak in.
Yeah, I might want to look at more of a line, not to necessarily win the division, but make the playoffs. You got to look at those win totals. I think they're somewhere in the 80s preseason. I think that's probably where they're going to end up, somewhere in there.
Yep, and that's a pretty good fair bet just to bank on. Sneaking in probably like a 7 seed. Maybe they're not probably not going to get that 1 seed like the Dodgers are probably going to possibly near be able to block.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. The Dodgers were so good a year ago, and then they spent another $1 billion. I'm not even making that up. $1 billion in the offseason and got so much better, and I don't think they're going to they're not going to get impacted by some illegal betting practices or suspicious, allegedly, right? Allegedly.
Yes, allegedly.
Shohei Ohtani needs to show some others the way. Just get a translator.
Right, get a right one for sure.
You'll be in the clear. Well, real quick, do you see anything there from the Giants? They had a really good start to last season, then faded so hard at the end of last season. Do you see more of the same there? Because they're not off to the best start this season.
I see
5-8, not bad, just, you know.
It's just kind of just getting their feet wet. And I know that ballpark is kind of weird at the beginning about said school year. Wow, we're talking about baseball season. That baseball stadium they play in is kind of weird at the beginning of the year. As the year progresses, the weather gets warmer. They tend to kind of play out a little bit better. It's hard to say. I mean, honestly, baseball is one of those weird games.
Yep. Okay, well, let's move on to the NL Central then, where currently your Cardinals have taken the lead spot. That's not where they started, at a plus 180 to win this division. I still like the Cubs there, and their value is getting a little bit better there at a plus 260, but really this is wide open. This is probably the most fun division to bet or to try and find value in the entire league.
Oh, yeah. I mean, top to bottom, 1 through 5.
Pittsburgh's leading right now with a 9-3 record, and they're not even they're the worst. They're one of the bottom teams as far as odds-on favorites. Some books, like DraftKings, has them at a plus 750 to win the division. So if you believe in the Pirates, now's the time.
Right. I mean, you got Pittsburgh. Cincinnati's also another intriguing look. I mean,
you can make the case for any one of these teams to sneak away and win this division.
Right. It's just a matter of the 5, who's got the best rotation?
Cubs.
Because I think I'd have to say the Cubs right now. Justin Steele is probably a top 10 NL pitcher right now.
Yeah. It's interesting. The Cubs, like at DraftKings, they're right behind the Cardinals at a plus 190, but most books have them close to that plus 250. Shopping around, we always say that. ESPN Bet, what Penn broke away from Barstool, they got them at a plus 190 as well. So there's only a few books out there that actually jumped the Cardinals over the Cubs. I just thought that was maybe a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction to an early start.
Right. And it's good to see St. Louis actually doing well because, there's so much tradition there. They've been around for a long time, and it's always fun to see in the summertime those battles between the Cubs and the Cardinals. They get a little spicy, that's for sure.
They do. The Cardinals had so many things break wrong for them last year. And I think if they can just get a little bit beyond the injury bug this season, which usually if you have one rough season, it kind of comes back. Baseball is one of those sports where everything goes back to the median. And I think maybe this Cardinals, they're back to the top spot again.
Right. It's all about the law of averages. If they play right, you're going to have those ebbs and flows, and ultimately it could be the Cardinals season, that's for sure.
What do you think of the Brew Crew? We talked about every other team but the Brew Crew, but I think they're a sneaky pick, and there's some things to like about their offense. They have some arms.
Yeah. They're quiet. They did lose a big arm in Corbin Burness, that's for sure. But they feel like they have a system that allows to develop a couple pitchers here and there to bring them back up into the top there. I'm not like bullish on them, but it's someone to take a look at and watch as the year goes on.
Yeah, I mean, they're in the 3-hole right now, and that might be where they stay the entire season with all the parts moving around.
Right, totally.
around them. All right, let's move on over to the NL East, and this is the division everybody is talking about, and rightfully so. Headlined by the Atlanta Braves. They're way out in front to win the division again. I don't know why you wouldn't think so. You got Spencer Strider, Ronald Acuna Jr., my boy from the Athletics, Olsen, hitting in the 3 or 4 hole there, hitting bombs. But I think the trendy pick, the sneaky pick, is the Philadelphia Phillies. And oh, by the way, they made a little noise last year during the playoffs.
Yeah, they tapped into that community pride in the city of Philly, and they rode it all the way to the World Series. They knocked out a couple powerhouses. I wouldn't be surprised to maybe lean on this one as a pick to win the division, partially because with Strider's injury, he's got Tommy Johns. He's out for the year.
He's out. Oh, my. Well, the books still have the Braves at basically a minus 330, 350, depending where you're looking once again. And the Phillies are right on them, though. They're right there. And I also think the Phillies are one of those teams where they were kind of roughed up last year as far as the injury bug. We'll say that again. Bryce Harper's 1 year removed from his injury. Right. I think he's going to be, hopefully, cross your fingers, knock on wood, right? He could put in a full season, and if that happens, I do think that elevates the Phillies to a whole nother level.
Oh, yeah, totally. And then you look at the competition, the Mets are always an intriguing side story just because of...
It's the Mets.
It's the Mets, exactly. Yeah. One to kind of look as a far reach is the Florida Marlins, the Miami Marlins.
They started 0-11.
They started 0-11. I know. They're just amazing. But they're so laden in youth. I know one of their pitchers, Yuri Perez, he's out for the year too. I mean, it kind of goes on and on and on. But it's someone, if you had to go like down the road, not for 24, but maybe 25, 26, look at the Marlins as a possible pick.
There's still a couple books out there that actually have the Marlins having better odds than the Nationals, than the Nats. And I mean, you can't have a worse start than 0-11. They did get a win. Yes. They're 1-11 now, so good for the Marlins. Well, we're up against it, so let's take a quick minute to recognize one of our fabulous partners, and that is the Nebraska Brewing Company. And guess what is back, Mr. Plotchek? The Triple Play Limited Edition can.
Oh, heck yeah.
The Ale Storm. That is the official beer of the Omaha Storm Chasers, AAA affiliate of the Kansas City Royals. Don't go anywhere, folks. This is WTL. And welcome back, everybody, to WTL, Where's the Line, Nebraska's first and only sports betting show. I'm your host, Andy Klassen, and once again, I am joined by Matt Plotchek because this is baseball season. We are getting into the big leagues now.
Let's go Royals.
No bias here, folks. We talked divisional favorites for the National League. Let's get right into it with the American League and your Royals. But let's start out west, where currently we have a tie at the top. A half-game lead, actually, by the L.A. They're once again the Los Angeles Angels at 6-6. The Rangers, who will probably end up in the 2-hole there, they're 6-5 with the leaders. But Houston, way out in front. They're only 4-8 right now. But by every metric, every book you look at, they're just so far and away your favorites here to win this division.
Easily, Houston, trash cans, what do you want to call them? Sorry.
They came into the season, 6 of the last 7 seasons, as the favorites to win the division, and they have done just that. It is interesting, the Rangers on some books are almost even odds with the Astros, thanks to this slow start for the Astros, sitting at 4-8 right now. But this is where I would have hoped that you could have gotten better value if you wanted to bet on the Astros, because I still think that that's where the smart money needs to go.
I think so, too. The only thing that is a difference between last year, where I sat almost in the same chair and said, look out for the Rangers.
There you go.
It's pitching depth. Rangers are losing DeGrom and Scherzer. They're not going to come back until at the earliest late May, early June. Astros has a bit more. The Astros have a bit more health, plus they're seasoned. You kind of have to rely a little bit more on the Astros here in this case.
Yeah, you really do. And where the Astros, their pitching staff, it was kind of a mess until after the trade deadline. Then they brought back Verlander, who they thought they could, they thought they were stacked enough to get it done without him.
Right.
And then they're like, okay, we're beat up here. We need you back, buddy. And plus, New York was done with him.
Right. You're just like, move on. See ya.
And we don't really need to waste any time talking about my Oakland Athletics, soon to be Sacramento Athletics or Las Vegas Athletics. So they're going to play baseball somewhere. Nobody has faith in the Angels. And I think the Mariners, they were a trendy pick for a while, but I really don't see that. They're down their all-star Franco. He's gone. He's out. And they led the majors in one-run wins. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about in the National League segment there, how things like to go back to the median. If you flip that, you're looking at the Mariners were 20 games under 500 last year, the number of one-run games they won.
Right. And they're I would say they're a bit on the sneakier side just because they do possess a couple good players. Julio Rodriguez is one of the best in 5-toolers in Major League Baseball. But just, there's too much elite in the 1-2 hole to overcome.
Yeah. So, right now, keep your eyes on it, but that plus 125, that's probably not good enough value for a long-term bet there on the Astros, but we both, I think, agree that they're probably going to win this division. Let's move on over to the AL East. Yankees are out in front, followed up by the Orioles at a plus 260. Yankees are minus money right now at the minus 125. A little surprised to see that because I still like the Orioles. And, oh, by the way, the Rays are the team that just keep winning the division. out of nowhere.
They just find a way.
They do.
It's definitely different baseball from what you and I watched, and it's intriguing. It's interesting to watch.
No one goes to the games.
Yeah, I mean, they play most of the time in a desolate ballpark and what have you.
The Trop.
We have the Trop. Orioles guys, ooh. This might be the plotty pick right here.
I like that. They're sitting in the 3-hole right now at 6-4, behind Boston. Come on, I think Boston's going to have another terrible year. I really think Boston's going to have a bad year. The Yankees are currently 10-2, and I think that's why they're at that minus money line. So I don't like the value at all looking at the Yankees. But here's where Baltimore, where you might have some of that plus 300. If you're believers in the Blackbirds, I like them right now.
They're a youth movement, man, and they're ready to play right now. I mean, you got Atlee Rushman. They just called up Jackson Holiday. I mean, pretty stellar pitching. It's a tough 1-2 to kind of lean on which way you can go.
Well, and they're a year ahead of schedule at least. The Baltimore was last year. Now I think they're just going to be a year better. It's not like one of those deals where, okay, that might have been it. The window's closing. Not at all. The window's still opening here for the Baltimore Orioles. So I think that's your value play right now at that plus 300, plus 290. I'm going Baltimore big. And if I had to go another direction, I'd probably go the Rays. And I can't even speak to why. I don't even know why I like the Rays other than that they just do it every year, it seems like.
Right. They find a way, one way or another.
They're always there. All right, let's get into the division that we're all thinking about here. That is the American League Central, currently led by the Guardians. What is that? Oh yeah, the former Indians. The Cleveland Indians are 8-3. Detroit Tigers are 7-4, tied with Kansas City at 7-4. Minnesota is still your clear favorite to win this division. They were preseason. They still are as of right now. Some books have them at a plus 130, plus 135, followed up by the Guardians in Cleveland at a plus 190, plus 180. Your Kansas City Royals are currently sitting at about a plus 600 if you take an average of 4 or 5 different books there. And maybe that's where your value play is.
I 100%, and I'm not going to say this is a homer pick. But go ahead. I've been really intrigued with how this team has played so far. Timely hitting, the starting rotation's been really, really great. It's scary. Don't get me wrong. Michael Wacha is that arm held on by Gorilla Glue and tape and duct tape. But they went out and spent some serious money. They did. Seth Lugo, just to name another starting pitcher, Hunter Renfroe. They filled in some spots where they definitely lacked.
You got to love that Renfroe there. That gives you some lumber.
Oh, yeah. And he's not a bad fielder in right field, too. He definitely has got one of the better arms in all of baseball, too.
Yeah, and if we want to, they spent the second most. I read an article where they're the second biggest spenders in the offseason to the Los Angeles Dodgers, which who else is going to spend $1 billion other than the LA Dodgers? Right. But the Royals, put on your tinfoil hat or whatever, your baseball tinfoil hat. I heard that, hey, if we're going to get this stadium moved downtown, we need to have a good season here. So that's kind of where this comes in, and it makes a lot of sense. Okay, we need a winning roster. We need to win some baseball. We need to get some excitement back around this team. And if that's the case, and you got management and you got middle management behind this, I could see the Royals making a push here, not just in the offseason, but also at the deadline to put them over the hump, win this division.
Right, and that's always been something. As a Royal fan, I'm going to put on my Homer hat for again. So here we go.
I got my tinfoil hat on. You got your Royal hat on. We're good.
Yep. Hopefully there's no lightning. All right, here we go. No, the big thing is that when a town like Kansas City has a winner, they get behind it 150%.
Oh, yeah.
And, the people will show up. They'll spend their money and what have you. They love to see that. They love to see that team. I was there in 2015. Every night they sold that place out, eventually won the world title.
Yeah.
When you get a winner in town, you get money. And I feel like if they're able to keep this trend, something magical could happen in Kansas City.
I love the value sitting here winning this division. You know, they dropped a couple games sitting at 7-4. Not bad at all. But there's currently in the 4 hole as far as odds are concerned. Some books have them at a plus 750.
Right.
FanDuel right now. I mean, get on it if you can, and if you're willing to play these long-term type of bets here. But I don't know if there's a better value out there to win a division than the Kansas City Royals right now at a plus 750. We saw a lot of these lines before the season at a plus 500, plus 600, and they're these really good teams that you felt good about. And now we've kind of seen the proof in the pudding. We're 10, 15 games in some cases. But I still feel like the Royals are kind of flying under the radar, and I really can't put my finger on it why you would have Detroit and Cleveland ahead of them. Like, it kind of blows my mind.
Well, Cleveland does a pretty good job of playing good team baseball. They've got a couple good starting pitchers. Detroit is loaded with talent. One of the best pitchers in the American League, Tariq Skubal. The dude's a bona fide Cy Young candidate. I know we're going to talk about that here coming up in a bit, but those are going to be really 3 neck-and-neck teams as we come out. And then he got Minnesota.
Yeah.
I think a 10-game sample is a small one. It's probably going to take 82 to 85 to win this division.
I like that number right there, like 85. And if I still think the Twins are going to win this. I really do. They're kind of my favorite. They were going in. They still are. I just think those bats are going to get healthy and stay healthy. You had a deal break bad for Minnesota across the board. Their arms got hurt. Their batters had Carrera had a career low, and just like every offensive statistic ever, he can't stay at that level. I think he's going to get better. So give me the Twins. I just think they can avoid the injury bug. Buxton, stay healthy. Stay in center field for me. Come on. Well, we're up against it time-wise, so let's take a quick minute to recognize one of our fabulous partners, and that is the Stock and Rod Company, an outdoor lifestyle brand for those seeking adventure. Whether it's hunting, fishing, hiking, they got you covered. Visit stockandrod, all one word, .com to get your wild game on. Don't go anywhere. This is WTL. And welcome back, everybody, to WTL, Nebraska's first and only sports betting show. I'm your host, Andy Klassen, and we are joined now by the one and only Lou Vinicaro from the Bout Business podcast and Sneak Teep. I heard your Sneak Teep earlier this week, UFC 300, and Lou, we are happy to have you on, and I'm fired up.
Well, Andy, I'm tickled to be here. I'm also very happy to support your efforts from Omaha and Nebraska. I'm an original Omaha native, and so to get back and visit with you and contribute to anything Nebraska is surely right up my alley, and I appreciate you reaching out.
We love it. We love it. And, I just looked at the UFC 300 poster a couple of days ago, and I think I counted 12 belts being held up that are on the line. So we say it all the time. Nobody does it better than Dana White and the UFC, and they have a dandy lined up here for UFC 300.
Absolutely. There's 3 belts on the line in this card, and the participants over 13 fights, 12 athletes that either do hold or have held the belt. Those other fights surely capable of being headliners on any pay-per-view or fight night card. So the card is stacked, and I'm really anxious to get into it with you.
Well, let's start early in the card. One of the first fights, that is Bobby Keene Green versus Jim Miller, kind of a fan favorite. We always talk about Jim Miller. He opened at a plus 180. He is currently getting some love. Last line I saw was at about a plus 150. Bobby Keene Green, still your favorite. But he opened up at a plus or minus 210, north of 200. Now he's down to plus 180. Green is younger, faster, more athletic. Why is Jim Miller getting so much love here?
Jim Miller is a fan favorite. At 40 years old, he participated in UFC 100, where he decisioned Mac Danzig. Then he participated in UFC 200, where he finished Takanori Gomi in the first round, and now he participates in UFC 300. And in fact, this fight with Green was scheduled 2 or 3 times, and for one reason or another, it wasn't able to go off. And finally, they're making the fight. Green 37, Miller 40. Miller appears to be the more well-rounded fighter, but if you dig a little bit deeper, Bobby King Green's wrestling is highly underrated. I believe he's every bit the wrestler Jim Miller is. He may not have the jiu-jitsu specialty that Jim Miller does, but he, as you mentioned, he's faster, more athletic, surely has more power in his hands. And I definitely believe that he should be the favorite here. And with the value moving from him at 210 at open down to 180, I believe there's a good bit of opportunity on Bobby Green. And I believe that this is a tough task for Jim Miller.
Yeah. I'm in lockstep with you there. I was just so curious when I started seeing that movement. And on your podcast about business, you're always talking about the line movement. You really hone in on it. And here's another fight. If we move on down the card, Calvin Kattar actually flipped with Aljamain Sterling, another fan favorite. So good with his wrestling, his grappling. Started out the underdog at plus 100. The latest line I just saw on the Warhorse Sportsbook line was minus 165. I guess, is that all because everyone just in love with Aljo and what he did in a different weight class?
Well, we haven't seen Kattar in some time, Andy, and the last time we saw Aljo, he got knocked out by Sean O'Malley, Phoenix's own.
Yeah.
And I believe that Aljo was compromising himself tremendously to make 135. He took that O'Malley fight just 3 months after he really dominated, if you will, Henry Cejudo. And so that was a tough spot for Aljo. Now he moves up in class to 145 from 135. I've seen him in some interviews. He looks great. He says he feels great. I think the extra 10 pounds will translate very, very well for him. And in this case, whereas I think I disagree with the movement to Miller in that fight, in this case, Andy, I think I agree with the line move to Aljo. Kattar, let's make no mistake about it. He is a great boxer, good with his hands, and really strong on his feet. He has wrestling more than we've seen, but I don't think he has the kind of wrestling chops that Aljo's going to bring to this fight. And Aljo, of course, is deft enough on his feet. So I agree with this line move and look at Aljo as being a worthy favorite here.
Aljo is known for, his wrestling first and foremost. So a lot of times it's hard to get good value on the over. Here I'm looking at a 2.5 rounds at about a minus 230 to the over. Is that enough value for you, or are you looking at that at all in this type of a bout?
I'm looking at a guy in Kattar that's never been finished. And so I have a hard time believing, even especially at the higher weight, that Aljo, who's not overly powerful unless he kicks you in the teeth, is going to have an easy time getting rid of Kattar. I would think that this fight, if you want to squeeze some opportunity out of it, you might look at Aljo via decision or the fight to go to decision. But I agree with that heavy line juice on the over 2.5.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on up the card here. This one has everything. The highlight, Justin Gaethje. We're talking about the lightweights here. Max Holloway moving up a weight class, another fan favorite, had to gain that 10 pounds. Just saw him in an interview. He looks good. He sounds good. That's just kind of one of the things about Max Holloway. Everybody loves the guy, but I tell you what, everyone likes Gaethje. The sentiment I'm getting is that everyone's on Justin, but they're saying, look out for Max. This, too, has seen some line movement. Currently, some money being poured in on Mr. Holloway.
Yeah, I see this line open minus 190 to Gaethje, and now it's compressed a little. Gaethje minus 175 again, depending where you shop. Gaethje currently owns the BMF title, and listeners will have to look up what exactly BMF means because I'm not going to say it. It's street slang.
Right.
And Gaethje earned that title with a knockout of Dustin Poirier, who we just saw dominate a really bad hombre in Benoit Saint Denis. Gaethje's last few fights have really been awesome. He has become offensively, he's remained a train wreck. Defensively, he's become more refined and worried more or concerned himself more with evading strikes. And he's been successful doing it, as experienced or witnessed by his last few results. He's the worthy 155er. He trains at altitude in Denver, which can't be underestimated. And he's totally prepared for Max because he knows that Max is fast, quick, precise with his strikes, and can fight 15 rounds, let alone 5, which this is scheduled for. So this should be a really excellent fight. It really, how you handicap this is how one feels that Max can move up to 155 and translate the quickness. His size should be fine. They'll be roughly the same size. But as I look at this fight, Andy, I see precision and movement and distance favoring Holloway, and I see aggression, forward pressing aggression and power on the Gaethje side. And I have to lean to Gaethje here, only because I still think he's got some juice left. And I think Max, and he doesn't want to hear this, but Max has had a long career. He's taken a lot of damage, and he does not practice as deft defense as other fighters do, and as Gaethje has started to pick up upon. So I think that if Gaethje can find him enough, the Ritz steps in there, because Max has never been finished in his UFC career. He guy's tough as leather, but I think this is a tall order for him, though he wouldn't want to hear me say that.
You walked right into where I wanted to go with this fight. We all know about Max and how he's a grinder, and that's how he wins a lot of his bouts. He'll just grind you to death with his consistent striking. I like Gaethje by decision at about a plus 270, plus 275, as you mentioned, depends where you're shopping.
Yeah, I think that's a very astute position. I think Gaethje could put him away, but again, Max has not been put away. And the wild card here is that we're going to go 5 rounds. Now, Max went 5 rounds with Volkanovski 3 times. And so how does that translate at the larger weight? I'm not sure, but I tend to lean with your sentiment that this should be a maybe not a close decision, but a decision that's decided now that judges are looking at damage as opposed to control. And it might be Max pitter-pattering his way into volume while Gaethje lands the more damaging blows.
I love that. Love that, Lou. Especially, when I get a guy like you on my side saying, hey, that's not totally crazy, I kind of take that as a little win for myself.
Well, it's easy on this side of the fights, Andy, but once we watch them and then we get to Sunday, then maybe it isn't so easy.
No doubt. Well, let's move on up to the title bout. Everybody's talking about it. Alex Pereira is your favorite over Jamal Hill. A couple of things at play here for this light heavyweight bout. Pereira, so good at striking. He's kind of burst onto the scene, beat so many great fighters. I'm thinking of Ziggy, Izzy. And then you have Jamal Hill. He's so athletic, but he's coming off an Achilles injury playing basketball back in July. He also hasn't had, 2 months to get prepared for this fight. So I see that opening line, why so much was on Pereira. But now you're starting to see some love or some money being bet on Hill. And I think it's due to all those little videos coming out and Hill, doing the interviews, and he looks good. He sounds good.
Yeah, Hill's flapping a little bit. He's a kid from Chicago that, was brought up in the streets. And so he practices some street ethic, if you will. But Hill is athletic, great legs, can move, and carries tremendous power. He claims to have a ground game, and I've heard other handicappers actually lean towards him having the more accomplished ground game, which I dispute and I will respectfully disagree with. Let's not forget that Alex Pereira has trained for the last 4 years under the tutelage of Glover Teixeira up in Connecticut. So even though we may not have seen grappling out of Pereira, make no mistake about it, he has it. And he's going to be, these guys are roughly the same structure and size, but Pereira will be a little bit larger. He's a monster at 205. And those believing that he might be susceptible to knockout because of what Izzy did, I would caution that was at 185 when he was compromising himself to get to that weight. Pereira is a beast, a world-class kickboxing talent.
Yes.
And to me, this handicap comes down to the fact that Hill is coming off that Achilles, as you mentioned. It was July. It's now 8 months later. The Achilles is the densest, most powerful muscle in your body, and to have an injury there and then try and come back 8 months, not only does that worry me for the Achilles, but the whole leg, the exercise and the rehab for that whole leg. And we know Pereira has bludgeoning leg kicks. He's going to absolutely target the calf of Hill, and that calf may not have had ample time to get back to where it was before Hill hurt himself as well. At the end of February, the UFC didn't have a UFC 300 headliner, and so they came to Hill. He decided he would get ready, and while he's had ample time in camp to prepare, I think that he wasn't planning. I know that he wasn't planning on fighting until 301, another month later. So is he rushing a little bit? There's plenty of people that say, well, he has great doctors that tell him he's ready. Okay, but this is the fight game, and this is Alex Pereira. Now, I'll admit, we released Pereira on Gamblu at minus 155. People listening to us now can get him minus 130. So I'm on the wrong end of this, but it doesn't sway me one bit. Excuse me for getting all tongue-tied. I really think Pereira has the advantage on the feet, and it will be Hill that decides to try and take this down before Pereira, in my humble opinion.
Interesting that you go there, because that's been the question. That's what everyone's talking about, the grappling with Pereira. But it sounds to me like with how he's been training and how he's measuring up Hill, he might actually welcome going to the mat after he works on that calf, works on that Achilles a little bit.
Well, I think the calf work will help take some of the athleticism away from Hill. And if you take some of that athleticism away, you take part of his fighting arsenal away, and that will allow Pereira to, pick and choose how he wants to attack him, a compromised athlete, if you will.
Lou, before I let you go here, this is a stack card, as we alluded to. It's so many belts on the line. Is there like an overview of how a gambler should kind of measure up UFC 300 with so many lightweights, featherweights up and down this card? Or maybe betting some of the overs, maybe a strategy, just an overwhelming or overall strategy bettors should be looking at?
Well, it's tough to throw a blanket and make one general statement, Andy. I know you're aware of that. But on this fight card, there's 13 fights, and only 3 of them take place at 185 or higher. The 85 fight is Brundage against Nickel, and that's just a mismatch setup for Nickel, so I'll throw that out. Then the 2 light heavyweight bouts, the main event we just talked about, and then Rakic and Prochaska. At that weight class, you realize 61% finish rates. So I think that those are the fights that you're going to see a little bit more power and explosion. Now, when you go down to under 170 and you track finish rates for 170 and lower, and actually 155 and lower, you drop to 51.23%. And so in a big cage, which we'll be in at T-Mobile in Las Vegas, and smaller athletes with more room to maneuver, I would say that you better watch for more decisions potentially. Now you gotta study the matchups. We talked about Aljo and Cater. Absolutely, I think that goes to decision. You look at Lopez and Yusuf. that easily could go to decision as well. But then you look at a fight like Turner and Moicano, and you have a guy in Renato Moicano, the Brazilian, that's a little bit chinny, and Jalen Turner, a big, huge monster for 155. Now you look at that line, and it's lined at 1.5 pick'em. That might be an indication of a fight that could be a little shorter. And what I would do is those 2.5s on the over-under, I would respect. The 1.5s might be the fights that you could maybe sense or try and gamble that there could be a finish or a submission.
Fantastic. Good stuff as always. Lou, where can folks find you?
Lou at gamblu.com is a direct way to email to me, but my webpage, gamblu.com, really highlights all the sports I work. I'm a UFC because that's year round, and I really have a passion for the fight game. But for Omahans and Nebraskans, I work the College World Series, and that's on the horizon. We're in conference play right now for the colleges. I work the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs that start in about 2 weeks, and the NFL. So Lou at gamblu.com, you can email me, and the webpage, gamblu.com. Andy, thanks so much for having me on. You're doing brilliant work in my home state of Nebraska. Keep up the good work, and I'll always come on and try and support you whenever you ask.
Appreciate it, Lou. And now you open the door, so we're going to have to get you back, especially with the College World Series. We had you last year, and you did a great job for us. So we'll be looking forward to that.
Happy to do it. Good luck to everybody. Thanks for everyone tuning in.
Don't go anywhere, folks. This is WTL.
And welcome back, everybody, to WTL. Where's the Line? Nebraska's first and only sports betting show. I'm your host, Andy Klassen, and I'm joined once again by Matt Plotchek. Plotty, we hanging in there?
Dang right we are.
All right, so we stepped away just a little bit, talked to Lou Vinicaro over UFC 300. We absolutely had to. I looked at their poster. I mentioned it to Lou. They always come out with those promotional posters. There was 12 belts being held up in that poster of all the fighters. Just crazy card that Dana White put together once again. It's an event, and I don't know if there's a commissioner out there that does it better as far as building an event and making it fun like Dana White.
I'll tell you what, he's a 3-ring circus general, if you want to call it that. I mean, I remember UFC when it first started way long ago. UFC 1, 1993. Ken Shamrock, and just how it's evolved to the sport that it is now. It's just been great, and Dana White's been a pretty good figurehead for something like this.
He really has. He takes no BS. He calls it out how he sees it, and it keeps everyone on their toes, and you gotta love it. So we always like to talk about it a little bit. That's one of Jabron's wheelhouses. He likes to get into that as well. But we got to get back into Major League Baseball. That's why we have you on here, and we want to talk about some individual awards. Then we can wrap it up with our World Series favorites. But let's start right there with Rookie of the Year odds. Right now, Wyatt Langford is out in front here. FanDuel has him at a plus 260 to take down Player of the Year. You got DraftKings at plus 225. And that's really, you're seeing that between plus 400 and plus 260 here for Langford. Jackson Holliday's right behind him at about plus 300 consensus.
Yeah, and the name that I'm looking at in my list is number 3, Evan Carter of the Rangers. I feel like, Langford's going to probably have the better statistical season.
Okay.
But I feel Carter's going to have more of the nicer, more important plays for the Rangers that is going to bump them over the top.
Okay. Well, and you've already talked about how you really like the Rangers maybe getting a wild card spot or just beating the Astros outright to win that division. Right. And if that happens, I think they do have to lean on Carter because they did lose some pieces from last year.
Yep, and they got bit by the injury bug early on this year. They already lost Young for a few weeks. He fractured his wrist. They're still rehabbing Scherzer and DeGrom. They're going to be back maybe May, June-ish, possibly at the earliest. Mm-hmm. So they're going to be relying on some very heavy hitting to start off, and hopefully Carter can be that catalyst.
Are there any dark horses, these plus 5,000, plus 4,000 guys that you kind of, we got such a small sample size right now, only 10 to 15 games, depending on what team you're looking at into this young season. And yeah, the front runners are out there. Langford, Holiday, Carter. Are there any of these long shots that you kind of like or you want to keep an eye on?
So there's 3 that come to mind just looking at my list. There's Rafaela from Boston.
Okay.
He just signed a long-term deal, so he's locked in for 8 years as a Red Sox.
Penn's got him at plus 6,000. I like that.
Let's go for it.
Sprinkle a little on that.
Heck yeah, let's do it. Then you got Caminero from the Tampa Bay Rays. He's finally getting some playing time at the hot corner there. Then if you go further down the list,
why do the Rays always have a good third baseman?
I don't know.
The Rays just always have a good third baseman.
They just must have a good product. They must have a good prospect guy. A name that might resonate with College World Series people, Heston Kjerstad, former Arkansas Razorback. He's also in the Baltimore organization. He's a possible look and see down the road. Yeah,
and there's so many young arms there for Baltimore, and he's going to get his chance to shine. And if they do make a playoff run or this or that, and can find their way into October again, you got to like his odds making some noise there.
Yep.
Well, talking about pitchers, should we move on to Cy Young?
Yep. Let's talk about some elbows, shall we?
Let's get into it. I mean. Right now, Corbin Burns is your front runner, sitting at a plus 450 on many books. Pablo Lopez is one of your leaders at plus 900, plus 800, depending where you're looking. And Shane Bieber plus 1,200. I don't know. It almost feels like it's just a little too early to be looking at Cy Young, but this is where you can get your value.
Well, Bieber probably will drop off a bit because he's actually got an injury, so he's out for a little while.
Okay.
Some other names that show up on my list is Scubo, like I may mention from the Tigers. Cole Reagans of Royal Lore. He's looked pretty good so far in the season.
Plus 900, plus 800.
And then you go down the line. I'm really high on the Orioles. I love Grayson Rodriguez. He's one of their top aces. He's looking pretty good too.
Rodriguez. Okay, yeah, I see him. Okay, here we go. He's at a plus 1,600. Okay, and when we say plus minus, if it's a plus 110 bet, what you're doing is you're wagering $100 to win 110 back. So you love seeing plus 1,100, plus 1,600.
Right.
But this is a long shot. Don't get us wrong here. What about Lopez? Right now he's in the top 3 runnings here. You're not sold on his early start here?
I think as the season progresses, he'll pan out. I mean, I just have to say, because he's a Minnesota Twin, sorry, they're a parlay pounder. I have to throw him under the bus a little bit. But no, there's no doubting his talent. He's a legit ace, and he might be that key for the Twins to win the AL Central.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about most valuable player, and I know there's one name that you're going to have to talk about here, and for good reason. Bobby Witt Jr. is amongst the leaders right now, plus 1,200. Juan Soto is your leader. He's at about a plus 350, plus 400, shopping around a little bit there. But in between Bobby Witt Jr. and Juan Soto, you got Aaron Judge and Alvarez from Houston. All names that I don't think you can sneeze at.
No, you look at the top 4. Soto's your clear-cut favorite. Although I have to admit, I've seen talented players go into Yankee Stadium and tend to fold a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see how he adapts to that climate.
Yeah, no surprise. 2 Yankees are at the top of this list, and you got to feel like it's kind of like USC football. Why are they always ranked preseason?
Right.
Little bit of the name, the cachet, and don't get me wrong, Juan Soto and Aaron Judge deserve some praise here, but it's just it's always 2 Yankees at the top at the beginning of the season.
Right. So that's why if I was a bullish picker, I would look at Alvarez from Houston.
Okay.
The dude can flat out rake. I know last night.
That. About a plus 1,000 right now you're looking at.
Yeah. And last night, I know 3 singles and a double, and their walk-off loss to the Royals. I have to throw that in there.
Bing. Get it in.
Dang right. So I would look at Alvarez as a possibility. As long as Houston's in that playoff race, he's certainly going to be a feeder into that.
Mike Trout's back up there. He's right behind Witt Jr. at about plus 1,200 across the books here, consensus. I like Mike Trout. There's not much you can't like about the guy other than he gets hurt too often.
Yeah, and here's the real rough thing about Trout is that he doesn't have that protection anymore.
Yeah.
Before he had Ohtani, now it's Mike Trout and
who are these guys?
But I don't want to say they're a bunch of no-namers. It's just that it's not Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, you can pitch around him a lot easier.
Yep.
Plate appearances are going to be a little tougher without old Shohei behind you in the lineup, that's for sure. Any long shots you like? I see Gunnar Henderson had a fabulous year last year for the Baltimore Orioles. I hope he can keep it up. I really do like what they're doing out there on the East Coast. But he's at about a plus 1,500, plus 1,800 on FanDuel. Any of those guys you would maybe look at?
I'm going well down the list, and I'm looking at a guy, Marcus Semien, for the Rangers.
Hey, okay, an old athletic, right? Okay.
Yeah, he is.
Yes, all right.
Last year was probably it was like a true breakout season for him. I'm going to say 300 batting average, 29 home runs, 670 plate appearances.
Yeah. Hey, Oakland Athletics, we are a farming system for the major leagues. We do a good job of getting this talent out there.
They certainly do. They're like raising corn, and all of a sudden, we're going to ship it off. We're going to ship it off.
Get it out of here.
Yep.
All right. Well, hey, things are winding down here. We got to talk World Series futures. Who do you like? Who don't you like? Obviously, the Dodgers are your front runners, but they've come back down to earth. They were way out in front preseason. Now they're at about a plus 300, so that value's gone down a little bit. The Braves are right behind them at about a plus 450, 475, wherever you're at, and then it kind of drops off. This is where you can get some value here. Astros, plus 900, plus 1,000. Yankees are behind the Astros, and behind them are the Phillies. So there's some really good teams. There's some really good value to be had when we're looking into this futures market.
This is where I made my pick last year.
It is.
This year, I would say go Royals, but we're not there yet. We're not there yet. If we make the playoffs, that'll be awesome. I'm going to put my money on the Baltimore Orioles to walk away with that cup in October.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. They're pretty close to the leaderboard here. They're behind the Rangers at about a plus 1,200, plus 1,400. Excellent value. Let's hear 3, 4, 5. They're the seventh right now, so that's pretty good. And that's one of those teams where I feel you won't catch too much flack taking a flyer on Baltimore. They kind of showed themselves last year. Like I mentioned earlier, maybe a year ahead of schedule. Mm-hmm. And this is one of those teams where the window is still opening. Right. It's not closing. This is a young team, and they're getting younger.
Yeah.
They're bringing in some young talent. You mentioned some of these arms they're bringing in that are up for some Rookie of the Year, Cy Young type of chatter. It's real early. It's real early. But I love that. I love that pick coming out of the American League. And then that's where those type of things tend to happen a little bit more is the American League.
Right. I mean, it's kind of more of a dynamic league. If you think about how the National League and American League, how they've evolved, National League is more of a pitching league. It's always been that way. And the American League's been a little more freewheeling. And therefore, I feel like in this modern day and age of baseball, the hitting is going to outshine versus the pitching.
Gunnarsson hits dingers, folks. Well, Matt, thank you once again for joining us. This will about do it for us. Be sure to follow us on ESPN Tri-City Radio and their Facebook page. We're also on Twitter at podcast_WTL. You can also find us on YouTube. That channel has been growing. It's a lot of fun for us to make those short videos and feature length. You're gonna be broadcast out there once again, Mr. Plotchek. So I'm expecting, a net 2,000 more subs once they see your mug again.
I love it. Maybe 2 million. Just kidding. Appreciate it.
Plotty, thank you for joining us once again and filling in for old Jabron. The parlay pounder took the week off there. You did a fantastic job. My name is Andy Klesson. Thank you all for listening. This has been WTL.